What if I told you there's one mental switch that could change everything? One mindset so powerful, you'll wonder why nobody ever revealed it to you earlier. A secret so simple, yet so explosive, that entire industries depend on you staying blind to it. Because if you knew this hack, you would never look at fear, failure, or frustration the same way again. The truth is, this hack has been hiding in your head all along, not in a dusty textbook, not in a $500 seminar, and definitely not in endless therapy loops. It's sitting there waiting, disguised as something ordinary. But when you finally see it clearly, it flips your reality upside down and makes you unstoppable. Here's the forbidden truth. You control the meaning, not society, not luck, not your parents, boss, or even your past. You, meaning, is the steering wheel of existence. And the hack is this: choose your meaning deliberately and you hack the system. Simple, yet lethal. Every single moment, your brain is silently asking, what does this mean? Did someone criticize you? You can decide, they hate me, or they just showed me where to improve. The event doesn't define you, your interpretation does. Psychologists parade this fact in neon letters because if people understood that meaning was always self-assigned, the maze of endless dependencies so many are trapped in would collapse overnight. This hack means no more outsourcing your confidence to experts, no more being hostage to overthinking, no more believing reality has already been written for you. Imagine how dangerous this truth is to a system that profits from keeping people confused or dependent. But once you see it, you begin to reclaim a kind of power most never realize existed. Think about your last so-called failure. Did it mean you're not good enough, or could it mean you just collected data and training? Both interpretations are available, but one sets you free and the other chains you down. Which one wins? The one you choose to feed. Your brain itself reveals how real this is. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself in response to repeated thoughts. If you constantly tell yourself you're powerless, the brain literally wires helplessness into default. If you choose to tell yourself you're adaptable, resilient, and resourceful, it wires those qualities into instinct. So by choosing meaning, you're not merely telling stories to feel better, you are physically reprogramming your brain. It becomes proof that your perception writes your wiring, and your wiring then reinforces your destiny. That's why this hack is not just philosophy, it's biology. But here comes the twist. Once you accept this hack, excuses die. You can no longer pretend life is happening to you without your input. Life may happen, yes, but what it becomes is the product of your chosen meaning. And once you admit that truth, staying stuck requires active self-betrayal. That's uncomfortable at first, but it's also the most liberating realization you can ever experience. Suddenly, you can flip the story of every setback. A broken relationship becomes training ground for higher standards. A lost job becomes boot camp for your creativity. Public rejection becomes free fuel for resilience. The story changes the second you decide it does. And when the story changes, the emotion changes. When the emotion changes, the action changes. And when the action changes, the entire course of your life evolves. You can already see why this truth isn't loudly advertised. Because the moment ordinary people realize that meaning is always theirs to choose, they stop being ordinary. They stop searching endlessly for saviors. They stop living in cages that were never locked. And suddenly, they become dangerous not to themselves, but to systems built on dependency. Let's test it right now. Think of one painful memory, something raw. Feel it for a moment. Now reframe it. Call it training. Call it the necessary hammer that forged your strength. Call it evidence you survived the unbearable. Instantly, the emotional weight shifts. That heaviness lightens just by that shift, that freedom is the hack in motion. If you can do it once, you can do it with everything. This power also bends time itself. Regrets from the past lose their grip when reframed as lessons. Present stresses shrink when reframed as growth tests. Future fears dissolve when reframed as thrilling adventures. Nothing outside changed, yet the timeline of your life feels rewritten. The past becomes empowering. The present becomes purposeful. The future becomes magnetic. Same reality, but with drastically different gravity. That's the power you unlock the moment you choose to assign meaning consciously. And it doesn't stop with you. Your chosen perception is contagious. People unconsciously mirror your frame. If you frame failure as data, they respect your composure. If you frame obstacles as opportunities, others treat you like a leader. If you frame chaos as simply a game, your entire environment begins to relax. Whoever controls interpretation controls the atmosphere. This hack quietly places you in that position of influence. Consider an example. Two friends lose their jobs on the same day. One frames it as proof the world despises him, and he sinks lower. The other frames it as the push she needed to start building something greater, and she rises. Same event, different meaning, different destiny. The question becomes, which path do you choose today? The prison of default framing or the freedom of deliberate framing? The deepest level of this hack comes when applied to identity. Everything you say about yourself, "I'm shy, I'm unlucky, I'm not qualified," is just an interpretation you repeated until it hardened into an identity. But identities are not fixed. They are just stories with momentum. If you can reframe setbacks, you can also reframe yourself. I'm resilient, I'm resourceful, I adapt fast. At first, these may sound like new lines, but with repetition, they rewire the brain until they are your natural instincts. That means you are not trapped inside an identity you didn't consciously choose. You can edit, you get to rewrite. Most people never touch this power. They let childhood experiences, harsh criticism, or failures turn into lifelong labels. But now you know the secret. You can become the author instead of the character. You are no longer being dragged through a story predetermined by shadows of the past, because you can hold the pen, and once you take the pen, hesitation starts to look ridiculous. Why would you consciously choose to write a life of helplessness when you could just as easily write a life of courage and opportunity? If you zoom out across history, you'll see every visionary leader or innovator was simply someone who refused the default narrative. They reframed problems as puzzles. They saw rejection as data instead of defeat. They turned impossible into inevitable. What others cursed as boundaries, they reframed as frontiers. That wasn't luck, it was the same hack you have access to right now, the same tool available to every human who dares to use it. Tomorrow, you could wake up and try one experiment. Tell yourself, everything happening today serves me. Delays, training in patience. Criticism, free mirrors for blind spots. Opportunities, multipliers for growth. Suddenly, the map of the day bends differently. Where others feel drained by setbacks, you feel fueled. The outer events don't change, but the meaning does. That single choice shifts the weight of reality. Practiced daily, it ingrains itself until reframing is no longer a trick, it's instinct. At that point, you stop asking, "Why me?" and instead say, "Try me." What happens 5 years from now if you adopt this habit? You look back and realize every so-called setback became raw material for success. You see that frustrations were actually gyms where resilience was built. You even discover your harshest critics became secret allies because they gave you fuel to keep moving. This isn't make-believe. It's the trajectory you create when you wield the hack consistently. And that's why few people hand this gift out loudly, because empowered individuals who claim the right to assign meaning are harder to control. But you've seen it now. The one mindset hack psychologists Don want to advertise is simple. You hold the pen that writes the meaning of everything you experience. No external gatekeeper owns that, only you. Once you stop waiting for outside permission and start assigning empowering meaning to events, confidence, clarity, and freedom cascade into your life. You stop being the prisoner of what happened, and you become the author of what it means. That's the hack. That's the key difference. And that's the first day of the rest of your life if you dare to apply it.